Nostalgia is a drug. It provides a sentimental longing for the past and often clouds our critical thinking about those past events or experiences. I often find myself reflecting on films and games in this way and wondering if my younger self was actually amused or if past me lacked the critical thinking skills that post-media degree me unfortunately has developed. Dead Space is one such example. Prior to a conversation I had on Halloween regarding horror games, I had not thought about Dead Space in years. In fact, I hadn't played the game since its release in 2008, but I remembered it fondly, and as such I was very aware that my nostalgia glasses may be the cause. I remember the feeling of helplessness and isolation, the world feeling so big and yet claustrophobic. So in a spur of creative calling, I decided to re-experience Dead Space for the first time in 13 years to see if Dead Space holds up as the masterpiece it was, or if nostalgia got the better of me. We join our crew aboard the Killian, a rescue ship sent to assist with repairs to the USG Ishimura. The Ishimura is what is known as a planet cracker, the largest vessels in the universe which, as the name suggests, crack open barren planets to strip them of their natural resources. These ships and humanity were sent into the stars following the near extinction of humanity on Earth due to resource scarcity. The USG Ishimura is the oldest of these planet crackers and has found itself disabled around Aegis 7 in a restricted sector of space, conducting an illegal mining operation. Our crew consists of Chief Security Officer Zach Hammond, Computer Technician Kendra Daniels, two pilots who unfortunately do not survive long enough to need names, and the most important character of all, Isaac Clarke. We quickly learn something is wrong when we are unable to flag down the ship over comms, and after a docking malfunction aboard the Killian, the ship is put down manually in the empty docking bay, substantially damaged. Hammond and Daniels begin to argue over the methods employed, while Isaac regains his senses and affixes his now iconic helmet. Before we talk about Dead Space, we first need to discuss its design and influences. Series creator Glenn Schofield originally pitched Dead Space as Rancid Moon and had little to do with the game we all now know and love. It was described as Escape from New York, John Carpenter's 1981 film about the island of Manhattan being turned into a high-security prison, but set in a space prison named Rancid Moon. This concept appears to be making a comeback with the Callisto Protocol set for release in 2022 from Schofield's new studio, which heavily hints at its extended relationship to Dead Space. While Rancid Moon was being workshopped, something happened that would completely change the game they were planning to make, Resident Evil 4. Many in the studio, including Schofield, became enamored with Resident Evil 4, and quickly the studio switched to attempting creating Resident Evil, but in space. Resident Evil's influence on Dead Space is easy to see in countless ways in regards to its mechanics, while the story lies elsewhere. Schofield counts himself as a fan of the 1997 cult classic film Event Horizon, a story not completely dissimilar to Dead Space, and refers to it as an inspiration for the story. Event Horizon sees the crew of the Lewis and Clark, led by Lawrence Fishburne's Captain Miller, board a spacecraft that reappears several years after vanishing, only to discover the horrors that stalk its corridors. Schofield also credited the science fiction works of famed authors Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke as inspiration, and as a homage to the two, named our hero Isaac Clarke. Taking these influences, Schofield indicated early on that his vision for the horror survival game that he intended to make would require total, unbroken immersion for the horror aspects of the game to work to their fullest extent. If we take a step back to the beginning of the game, after the crash landing in the docking bay, the game fluidly cuts from Daniels assisting Isaac with his suit in a cutscene directly into gameplay with no loading in between. Loading screens are jarring, and from a gameplay standpoint, it allows us to reset, or at the very least have a mental save point. Dead Space does not provide this, as menus, shops, and save points do not make us leave the game state. We are still squarely in possible danger entering a menu. Typically, seeing a shop or a save point would indicate a period of calm and rest, but in Dead Space, it presents another opportunity to spawn an enemy to keep you on your toes. As we rejoin the rest of the crew at the bay doors entering the barren ship, Isaac brings the ship back to life and trips the automatic quarantine. The lights flicker, alarms sound, and we watch from behind a protective glass our unknown antagonists spring to life and make short work of our unnamed pilots. Due to the sights and sounds, our senses are overwhelmed as we are told to run, bobbing and weaving to avoid being slashed as the elevator doors close, only for the classical trope of the helpless elevator passenger to be saved at the last second. User interfaces, as useful as they tend to be in video games, often lead to immersion breaks in any genre, and when developers tend to think they are smarter than the formula, it often leads to UIs that, while not breaking immersion, do so to the detriment of playability and information. The Dead Space team took note of these fatal flaws in previous implementations and meticulously designed a UI that places immersion at the forefront while not sacrificing on playability. The team did something incredibly compelling and turned Isaac himself into the user interface. This approach leads to natural placement of information. Isaac's health lives on his back and changes from green to yellow to red to indicate status, and is clearly shown from the first moment we take control. We do not have an ammo count that lives on the screen, but when the information is relevant, Isaac pulling out his gun, we are shown the ammo count. When we utilize the mapping waypoint feature, we are not seeing it as a floating object or on a mini-map. Isaac himself is projecting it, and it indicates that it exists in the world. I refer to this as natural placement. We are not only playing as Isaac, but we are Isaac, and as such, we only see information when he as a person would have the ability to see it. The third-person shoulder camera is also another deliberate move, as Rancid Sky was originally being developed as a first-person shooter, but the team felt that being able to see Isaac in the world and being able to see him being torn apart would lead to a heightened emotional connection and would also lead to the development of these UI elements. Speaking of being torn apart, Dead Space in its very essence prioritized the countless ways in which Isaac could be obliterated. From being decapitated to having his arms and legs cut off, there was no lack of options for the game to choose from when deciding Isaac's fate. I've read countless articles and videos from the Dead Space team that show these elements were quite important to them when developing the game. While I understand wanting to highlight the technology behind these countless death animations, I'm not really sure how much I personally feel they brought to the world, though at the same time, I do not feel that they negatively impacted the world, so I guess live and let live on that particular aspect. As we rejoin Isaac after his daring escape and separation from his remaining crewmates, we come to find out that we need to end the quarantine and get the tram back online to allow all of us to access the different parts of the ship and our mission to get home. This is where we get our first real taste of our main antagonists, the Necromorphs. Necromorphs are mutated corpses reshaped into horrific new forms by an extraterrestrial infection. Necromorphs are extremely aggressive, attacking the unaffected on sight and live, or relive that is, for no other purpose than to create new corpses for the infection to spread to. The Necromorphs are where I truly believe that Dead Space thrives, and not to discredit all the world building and immersion aspects we've discussed, a primary reason that the franchise was catapulted into early success. Players were used to the very organic concept of aiming for the head or center mass for the quickest kills, but in Dead Space that was a surefire way to end up dead. Necromorphs, while being able to kill via those means, are super ineffective, and the game lets you know in many ways. Seriously, they literally painted on the walls that shooting the limbs is the most effective way to end a Necromorph's life. This is the primary way that the Dead Space team felt that they could take the Resident Evil formula and add their own twists to make the game less a clone or copy and more, as previous discussions implied, an inspiration. In theory, shooting limbs should be easy, as our standard Necromorphs, the Slasher and the Leaper, have large appendages, but oftentimes when there are multiple approaching you, it's a natural instinct to revert to shooting center mass, and even with only one on the screen and countless hours into the game, I still had to actively think to shoot limbs or waste countless amounts of ammo. There are countless types of Necromorphs in the game, from our common types to those that take up entire airlocks, and those that live within the core of planets. While this is not a lore video, and I encourage you to read up on the Dead Space lore, I would be doing a great disservice if I did not jump into the overarching story of Dead Space. We have talked a little bit about the beginning of the game, but the beginning of the game is really about discovery and introducing you to your new hell. As we progress through the ship, completing tasks aimed to bring the ship back to working order, or working enough to allow us to escape on our ship prior to being destroyed, we start to find unaffected crew members who kill themselves in quite dramatic ways and start to uncover the true origins of the infections on Aegis 7 and the Ishimura through recordings and our interactions with a member of the Church of Unitology. The Church of Unitology was a secondary antagonist faction who believed that the human race was created by the intelligent design of divine aliens and will be reunified after death in heaven. We slowly learned that many members of the ship, including the captain, were believers, and upon their illegal drilling operations found a sacred artifact known as a marker. Markers are significant to the Dead Space lore, as these alien artifacts are what caused crew members to go crazy, hallucinating loved ones as Isaac does with his girlfriend, who was aboard the Ishimura, and oftentimes committing suicide or murder and giving off the infection that caused the transformation into new Necromorphs. Isaac soon discovers that the artifact was brought onto the ship, and the mission quickly changes to returning the marker to the planet, hoping to end the infection. I personally found the story of Dead Space to be very engaging, even primarily told through voice logs. Oftentimes I find this to be a lazy way of storytelling, but in a world such as the Ishimura that has since lost its crew, it's the only effective way to tell the story while not detracting from the isolation. Even though we do briefly interact with two members of the crew, one who aids us in attempting to remove the artifact from the ship, and another who takes it upon himself to genetically engineer a necromorph that is near invincible and chases us around the ship, those interactions actually add a further isolation, as they are short and we are quickly drawn back into the isolation. Dead Space, even all these years later, still enthralls me. The world building, the lore, the immersion, many aspects of this game do not show their age, and in many ways still outshine games releasing today in all aspects but the graphics. With the Dead Space remake possibly being scheduled for a 2022 release, adding all these elements that made Dead Space a masterpiece with a graphical revitalization, we are truly in for quite the experience. Thank you for watching. This is my first real foray into making more narrative style content, so if you enjoyed, please do like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments below what you liked or disliked about the video, as well as what other games and topics you would like to see covered.